Hello! I was out at a local trash and treasure market looking through some stall that had all these old tins and things, and I came across this really battered looking paint tin. I managed to get it for a couple of bucks, and I thought today I would see if I can do something with it. I mean, look at that, it's just absolutely had it. It is so battered, it's so miserable looking. It says it's made in England, and that's all I know about it. I couldn't tell you if this is made by a particular company or anything. There are no logos. My best guess is this was a student grade tin, maybe something a child would take to school. It's got 18 wells. You can just see how bent that is. It's absolutely filthy. It's got a tiny bit of paint in there, but I can't imagine it would be very good. Just got a bit of old paper here. I'm really curious to see if those paints will re-wet at all. I'm just going to put some water on. I don't know how old this is. It could be 50s, 60s, 70s. It does re-wet. Not so bad. Yeah, it's not great though, is it? Yeah, it's got pieces of nastiness in there. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? I think this paint's pretty much had it. Oh dear, that one's hideous. Look at it. That's not so bad, that one. Okay, I think we can safely say that paint has pretty much had it. So what I'm going to do is try and restore this. It's not the end of the world if I ruin it completely. I'm going to get rid of all of this paint. I'm going to soak this for a while because it is absolutely caked with filth. And I don't know where this thing has been. Probably in someone's shed or garage for heaven only knows how many decades. Even if it's a antique, it's really in such bad condition, it's not worth anything. So let's see if I can bring it back to life and make it useful again. So after letting it soak for a few days and scrubbing off as much filth as possible, now I have at least a clean palette, although you can see there is a lot of rust on it. And I ended up moving outside because I was going to use some different little hammers here, and I really didn't want to make a mess in my studio, and it was really loud. My studio table is made of glass, so hammers and glass are not a good combination. In the end, I decided on this little hammer that I have for embossing, and the rounded ball end was much better than the flat end. I just spent quite a long time hammering out the dents in this metal as much as possible. Now, I'm no blacksmith. I was not going to get this in a perfect condition, but I think overall it did get a lot better, and at least it was in a more usable condition. I was able to hammer out the bent edges and straighten those up, so the box now opens and closes a bit more easily than it did before, although it's still quite awkward and I don't think I was able to fix that properly, but never mind, it got better as I went along. This was a little bit of an arduous process, so I think I'll speed this up. Now, before I could do any painting, I really needed to use some tools to take off a lot of the rust and things. So here's all of my protective gear: safety goggles, P2 mask because that keeps fumes out as well as dust, and some fairly sturdy gloves to protect my hands as well. Always remember safety first, because I'm going to use a Dremel tool with a wire brush that could easily flick off into my eye, and it's my eyes which I was most concerned about. So here I am, all ready to go. Now, I am not very experienced with these sorts of tools, so I was freaking out a bit, but I managed to get it going, and Up first, I'm using a copper wire brush. I also have some steel ones, but I thought the copper would be just a bit softer in case I made a total mess of it. And what I was doing is just trying to take off as much of the rust and old paint as I could, just so that I could get a nice smooth surface so I can paint over it. And it went okay, but once I got to the steel brush a bit later, that took it off a lot more easily. And I will spare you the sound of the Dremel because it sounded really awful, and I also had a pair of headphones on, so I was sporting all the safety gear in this. I should also note this is not actually a Dremel brand. This is one from Aldi that I got ages ago, and it's really good actually. It came with a whole bunch of accessories too, but I'm just calling it a Dremel because I really don't know what else you call this thing. A multi-tool? I don't know. The outside was quite severely rusted, and the copper brush wasn't doing very much at this point, so I did give up on this and I switched over to that steel one. But you could just see me struggling away here, trying to get as much as I could off, but it really wasn't working. So now I've got the steel brush going and I'm having another go. And in the meantime, my husband Nick had pointed out that the Dremel kit also has this extension piece, so I didn't actually have to hold the whole unit. I could just hold this handle and it was much easier to control and a lot less heavy, so this was really good. And off I go with that spinning steel wire, which worked far more easily, and I was able to get a lot more off and smooth it out as much as possible. I probably could have spent longer actually getting every single piece of paint off this. You could see it's coming down to the metal in some parts, and it really did take quite a long time to get there, and I was a bit concerned about flicking it into my eye and things like that. I have a little bit of a fear of these tools, so I just took as much as I could handle off. You could just see all that dust going everywhere. That's why it's really good to wear a mask, because you really don't want to be breathing that into your lungs. Heaven only knows what's in that paint. I really hope it's not lead paint. I've also got my hands covered, and I did thoroughly wash them afterwards as well, just to make sure that nothing got on me that was poisonous. I used a slightly bigger brush here to get off more of the paint. You can probably just see how much dust and filth is around it, so it did pretty well, and I'm quite proud of myself for using this tool in a useful manner. I've had it in my cupboard for ages, and I look at it thinking I really should learn how to use this, so here we go. The outside paint refused to come off, so really all I just did here was just try and smooth it, take off that rust that you can see there, at least to get it as flat as possible so that when I put the paint on I'm not going to have bumpy bits everywhere. And here it is once I'd cleaned it up again. As much of the paint as I could get off. It's pretty smooth. There are a couple of little bumps which I didn't quite manage to get, but most of it is pretty good. And now I'm going onto the paint job with some epoxy enamel with the primer already in there, so I took it for its word and hoped like heck that this was actually going to stick. Gave it a good shake, remembered to put some newspaper down, and here I go with the spray can. Kind of stuffed it up a bit there, but soon got the hang of it, and I did a couple of coats. I only filmed the beginning of this because I did this over a couple of days at various times and I was too lazy to bring the camera out. So this is the start of it. I did coats on both sides and just covered the whole thing in white gloss enamel. So here we are, a few coats later. You can see it's not perfect. I did not manage to get all of the dings out. That was far beyond my capabilities, but I think it's looking a lot better. For a moment there I thought the whole thing had glued together, but no, it's still good. I like the inside. I think that's come out pretty well. I thought I'd got all the rust off, but apparently not. Never mind, it's better than it was. So what I'm going to do is decorate this cover and the back as well. I'm going to leave the inside white. So I've got some alcohol inks here. What I'm going to do is tape around the edges so that the ink doesn't run from the outside to the inside, because I really want this to stay clean. Taped it up as best I can. Hopefully that will keep the majority of the ink from the inside. And I'm just going to do a basic pattern on the top, I think, like a galaxy, because I've been into galaxies lately. So I've got a few different inks here. I've got a turquoise, indigo, eggplant, maybe some black, and any other colours that take my fancy, and I might chuck on some of these sparkling inks as well, because why not? Alright, let's get into it. I had a great old time chucking inks on here and using a mini camera blower to spread that ink around. It was so much fun. I made such a mess and I was not doing any planning here. I just threw the colours on and let them run where they may, though I did start with the lightest colour in the middle and move out to darker blues and then eventually black. So somewhat of a pattern, but not really. I also threw on some of the iridescent inks, which gave it a subtle shimmer, but it wasn't really showing up that well, so that was a bit of a fail, but never mind. It kind of looked pretty cool, and the pink was really vibrant. I think that gave it far more of a galaxy feel rather than just the blues. And then I smothered the whole thing in a thick coat of clear acrylic gloss, which I spread on with my finger because a brush would just leave hair marks and drive me crazy. I know I missed a couple of spots, but I did end up covering those eventually. Used some chopsticks to put the whole thing up, and then I peeled off the tape once it had all dried. Annoyingly, I got ink on it, so I ended up carefully spraying the inside again with another coat of gloss enamel, and here it is when I first got it, all battered and rusty, just looking really miserable and pretty much unusable, with some super nasty paint that needed to come out. So want to see what it looks like now? Ta-da! It's so shiny! I really love it. Okay, there's a few little marks from where I didn't quite manage to hammer out all of that metal straight, but I think it turned out really well and I am so happy with it. The alcohol inks are just so vibrant, and you can see some of the sparkle in there as well, a bit of a galaxy effect. So I am chalking this one up as a success. Yay! Just before I show the inside properly, I just thought I'd flip it out and you can see the full design when it's laid out flat. Not too bad. Now I'll flip it over so we can see the inside, and I love it so much. The gloss enamel spray worked so well. In the end I decided not to squeeze paint into the wells because they're super shallow and I can just see it making a mess, but it makes an excellent folding mixing palette which I can put in my travel bag for use with my small paint palettes that don't really have much space for mixing in them. And it's so lightweight, as you can see the paint mixes really well, and I'm really happy. It also cleans up like a breeze, although I'm sure phthalo blue will stain it in no time. Good as new. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's not perfect, but I just think it's got a brand new lease of life, and at least it can be used again. So once again, it becomes a useful item rather than it being bent, rusted, and languishing in some guy's garage and it's got some slight character in there. That's what I'm going to call it. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button for more videos, and I will see you again really soon. Have a wonderful day. Swatch you later. Bye.